Yes, good morning, Al.
Good morning.
I wanted to mention your statement that get rid of the white trash politicians.
No, I said recycling.
Well, regardless. And Charlie Rangel made a statement that Ross Perot was a white cracker. I'm just wondering, you black politicians and you black so-called leaders, you throw these white comments around and nobody takes you into task for it. Supposing someone called the leaders of the New York City or Detroit or black trash or black crackers or niggers, whatever.
Well, I think, first of all, there's a distinct difference in the term nigger, as you call it, and a political term. I remember when Mayor Koch was mayor, he called Dellums a Zulu chief. So there's been, and he called people swatspas, which was a Yiddish term for niggers. Come on, let's not act like that has not happened. And I think that we've got to be honest about that.
White cracker is nothing but a derogatory term for a low-life Southerner.
Who has a racial point of view, not just a Southerner.
Yeah, well...
All right, now what is nigger term for? It's not for a low-life black. It's for any black, isn't it?
But the point... Hello?
Mm-hmm.
The point I'm trying to make is most of the cities that... I'd like your comment on this. Most of the cities that are run by blacks, Washington, D.C., L.A., Chicago, Philadelphia, Detroit, they're on the verge of bankruptcy. How do you explain that?
Because most of them were on the verge of bankruptcy when the black mayors were elected.
That's not true.
Oh, well, certainly New York was, certainly Philadelphia was, certainly the Chicago, Detroit. Come on, these black mayors were elected when the bank was broke.
No, that's really not true. And you're talking about not getting enough money for education. In New York City, I think, what is it, $6,000 a year they pay for each student? And these kids can't even read their own diplomas.
And well, whose fault is that?
It's the mothers and fathers, the parents of the kids that are going to school.
We spend $6,000 per student.
That's right.
Pay teachers, but it's the parents at home's fault they can't read and write. No, it's the parents at home's fault for many things. But if it's reading and writing and we're paying for it, then it's not their fault. And we pay $25,000 per inmate. We spend a lot more money locking people up than we do educating them, Tom. And I think that is not a good investment. But I thank you for calling me this morning. You're listening to Reverend Al Sharpton, sitting in for Joy Behar. This is WABC. You can call me and we can talk. Let's go to Renee in Crown Heights.
Hello?
Yes.
I'd like to know, you're running for Senate. I would like to know, as a Jewish woman who had my windows broken and my children terrified in Crown Heights last year in the riots, how you are going to address the Jewish people to have any idea to even think of supporting you.
Address them in what issue, ma'am?
On the issue of safety.
Well, the issue of safety is...
Right. My children cowered in my house when black mobs roamed the streets of Crown Heights.
Okay, well, let me answer you because we got to go to break in 30 seconds. The way to assure safety and peace is to have equal protection under the law. When people perceive they're being treated unfairly, it causes for explosions. Even though I do not endorse violence, we must deal with the reality that people will react when they're treated unfairly. Let me get back to you after the break. It is 10 o'clock, WABC. Sharpton sitting in for Joy Behar. Yes, the rumors are true. I am here, and we are going to be discussing, debating, arguing, talking, and loving, whatever you prefer. You can call me at area code 201-489-WABC if you're calling from New Jersey. Only from New Jersey, 201-489-WABC. From the rest of the world, including Connecticut and New York, call me at 212-563-WABC and let us see what you have on your mind. We are going to Queens, to Jean. Good morning.
Good morning, Reverend Al.
Good morning.
I'm a teacher in the educational system, and you were discussing earlier some of the problems, about the inner city children and their low achievement. And I just want to point out a few things. There are many variables which account for the low achievement in the inner city schools. Because of behavior, many of the minority students are perceived to be low achievers, and therefore a hostile environment is maintained in the classroom.
Right.
In addition to that, children are grouped homogeneously, placing all low reading scores in the same class, and the children are very aware of it, that they've already been written off as non-achievers. Now, many of the children have no interest in their studies, so they're disruptive, and they create this disruption in the classroom. So it's difficult for the teacher to be creative and maintain the tension required to keep those disruptive children quiet.
Well, I think that the teacher must do something, though, about the negative environment and hostile environment. And I think you're right that many of them are already portrayed as underachievers, so people come and cast them and try to reinforce that into their mentalities. And I think any institutional move to reduce the ambition and reduce the ceiling on one's perspective is wrong and must be eradicated.
Well, I agree with you, but listen, teachers get their methods through educational research.
Which is why we need to change that.
Okay, well, I agree with that as well, but so far this has not been done.
Well, we must take people into office that will make sure that we put people on the boards of education. We must elect people in community school boards that will make sure that it's done, Gene, because we cannot write off a generation of young people. Thank you for calling. We're going to Manhattan and talk to Paul. Good morning.
Well, hello.
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to tell you that I agree that Bob Grant and to a extent Rush Limbaugh always come out with racial comments, and that really sickens me. And I think I take them to task largely for being hypocrites, but I find a lot of hypocritical things about you, too. You profess to help the black community, yet you don't live in the black community.
Where do I live?
Well, from what I understand, you live in a white, middle-class, suburban neighborhood.
Named what?
That's what I'd like to know.
Well, no, you can't make an accusation and then ask the defendant.
Well, I'm asking you
can't ask the defendant to prosecute himself.
What? Pardon me?
You cannot make an accusation and then ask the defendant to prosecute himself. If you have a case, come on with it.
Well, do you or do you not live outside the black community?
I have an apartment in Crown Heights, and I have an apartment in Englewood, New Jersey.
In Englewood, New Jersey.
And both of them are black.
Well, why do you live outside of the troubled area? You live in a safe area in Englewood. Why don't you work within the black community?
Paul. Englewood is not a safe community. Englewood has had, Englewood and Teaneck has had its share of problems. And Englewood is not a non-black community. All of my neighbors are black, and all of them are paying rent and struggling. I mean, are you now trying to dictate now where I must live?
I'm not dictating. Do you think police should live in the neighborhoods that they serve? Do you think they should all live in New York City if the New York City police? Well, I think you, as a community activist, should live 24 hours a day within your community.
And I serve both. Wait a minute. Let me answer that. And I have served.
People leave the community.
Wait a minute. You know, Paul, you don't want answers. You ask questions, you don't want answers. I served and have served, as we just got through talking the last hour about my movements in Teaneck. I have served the black community in both New Jersey and in New York. So if somebody in New Jersey would take your position, their answer, someone in New York would take your position, their answer. Just like after January, I'll be living in Washington and in New York and serving people in New York. So I'm practicing for dual livingship, if there's such a term. But I thank you for calling and being concerned about my residents, but I live with blacks on both sides of the Hudson. And I'll be moving my Jersey residents to Washington with your help. Thank you, Paul. Let's go to the Bronx and talk to Mike.
Al, it's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
There's two things. One is that the tapes and the other is the school. But first I want to congratulate you on your work that you've done in New York.
Thank you.
Because I feel that if you hadn't done that work, the frustrations of not having any justice would have boiled over like it did in L.A.
Thank you.
So I think that the community, the both white and African-American community, should thank you for the work that you have done. But I just want to, I noticed that this releasing of the videotape was rather convenient. And I was just wondering, what did you think about this?
I think that anyone with a brain would question why someone would release a tape, a 10-year-old tape, in the middle of a Senate race. But again, it didn't bother me because it proved that there was nothing criminal that was ever done. So what they're trying to do is confuse people by saying, well, why would Sharpton be in a room with a mobster when there's no evidence at all that I knew he was a mobster? And even if I did, we were certainly not doing mob business. I think that what they've done is they have killed the golden calf that they've tried to dangle at the community for years. And the timing of it, I mean, their 10-year-old tape, I mean, I would love to see the tapes on D'Amato. I'd love to see the tapes on April. Why don't we all just sign affidavits and let the FBI release whatever tapes they have on all of our private lives? My tapes are out. Let's see everybody's tapes. And I can assure you, if they did, I would be the only one left running in this race.
I totally agree with you, and the point that the tape was released at this time, and they know the impact that you have on the African-American community, and because there's so many, I guess, white candidates in the race, they figure that if they separate you out, then they can get the candidate they want. It's quite obvious. I don't know why they think we're so stupid that we will buy that.
Well, their underestimation will be our victory.
Okay, the other thing is the public school system. I want to support you and your position about the public school system, because I'm at PS 94, and they put up this selection process for principals in which they want to include parents involving and choosing assistant principals and principals, and yet when we chose a principal, 10 parents and 3 pedagogues, they went around it and put in the person they wanted to put in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the same school haven't had a library, which we fought for and got back for 9 years. It didn't have a gym, which we fought for and got back in for 9 years. And we don't have textbooks going from one classroom to another, lack of continuity, teachers out sick all the time, a whole host of things, which has nothing to do with the children, by the way.
And that affects the education of children, and I think you should keep on fighting that, Mike.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. It reminds me of the fight in Brownsville now, where people are fighting for building a high school rather than a jail, Brother Bowman and them. I think we've got to fight to have education and quality education and inclusive education around the city. Let us go. This is Reverend Al Sharpton sitting in for Joy Behar, WABC Radio. We're going to Joe in Manhattan.
Hello, Reverend Al.
Good morning.
I'm known to some as Professor White folks. Okay, so King Cipher of Wisdom. We met a couple of years ago. I was at the Slave Theater, at which time I spoke with Jennifer and Joseph. I was trying to discuss a deal with you getting on an FN show, which you, at the end of the deal, you wound up on their TV show, but I'm not going to discuss who that was. I just have a few quick comments, if you'll let me. Number one, that particular article in the Post yesterday, that was typical propaganda, in my opinion. It was, for me, it was a black man interacting in race relations, and ultimately he was set up by the feds.
I think that's clear.
Okay. Also, I'd like to give some background for what I know about Al Sharpton, Reverend Al Sharpton. From what I understand, you were you were preaching at 5 years old. 4 or 5 years old. You were ordained at about 12.
10.
And from what I understand, like at 17, 18 years old, you were traveling around the country with Reverend Jackson and a host of people sharing and discussing race relations.
Correct. I was his youth director.
Right. So this doesn't sound like someone that just fell out of a tree.
No, I've been doing this all my life. I think that I don't know how you, Professor, have the background, but I was appointed by Reverend Jackson, youth director, at 14. I've been involved in civil rights all my life. I've never done anything else. You're absolutely right.
Right. And from my perspective, I see a lot of positive things coming out of Al Sharpton.
Well, I appreciate that, Professor. You've earned your title with me.
Well, I'd like to possibly help and assist in your political involvement, and if there's any way I can assist, I'll make myself available.
Well, call when we go up the air. We're not here for politics, but I'd never turn down an offer for help. But I'm this morning sitting in for Joy Behar at WABC, and thank you for calling, Joe. I'm going to Northwood, Florida. I want to fight somebody. Don't be so nice to me when I'm here and bad when I'm away. Call up and take your best shot. From New Jersey, call me at 201-489-WABC. From Connecticut and New York, 212-563-WABC. Everybody call. Come on and let's have it hot like it was last hour. Don't have Bob come in here this afternoon and tell you off for not getting Al Sharpton pinned down this morning. Let's see what you want to talk about, Floyd.
Yeah, I'm taking my best shot, Al. Let's see if you hang up on me.
All right.
What about?
Get off my... No, go ahead.
What about that riot down there in Belmar, right? I didn't notice anybody saying anything where they were the blacks were dragging the whites out of the cars and beating them, and it was the same in Chicago during the Rodney King thing, and L.A. I don't see anybody getting prosecuted and sent away and doing heavy time like they did in Howard Beach or anything. You see two sets of standards there, Al?
Well,
let me ask you one more question. Mm-hmm. Can you blame white people for not wanting to live with blacks when they see them acting like that? Can you really blame us?
Well, Floyd, you coming on with it. I knew that Bob Grant crowd would wake up. I was afraid y'all was sleeping. Well, first of all, Floyd, I don't know that you are giving a proper assessment of what happened in Belmont, Chicago. Certainly we know that the people that were accused of dragging somebody out of a truck in Los Angeles, and they said that there was racial epithets thrown at them, they're being prosecuted. I've never known a situation where there was a blatant evidence there where blacks were not prosecuted. I don't think there was a double standard there. I am not in any way familiar that people were allowed to walk away. And as far as people not wanting to live with us because of how they see see us act. I mean, look at how the people in Bensonhurst act and Howard Beach act. It's not that people are breaking their necks to live next to people that act like that. It's that we want to live decent lives. We want to have our fair share of resources, and we want to have control over our lives, and we're happy to live with each other. Do not flatter yourself thinking that I'm dying to live next door to you, Floyd. I'm just dying to control the door to my house. But I thank you for calling, and you're in Newark. Why are you living in Newark if you don't want to live with us? Let's go next to Long Island to Greg.
Yes, Al. Hello, Al.
Yeah.
A gentleman called earlier saying that he seems to be spreading the racial tension rather than addressing the problems in the black community. I had a comment about that. You hung up on him pretty fast. He sort of went right over the issue. The latest statistics show that a small minority of blacks are killed by whites, yet a large majority of blacks, especially black teenagers, are killed by other blacks. Yet you never see that in the paper. You don't march for that reason. It seems like you're more after the publicity rather than addressing the black.
Well, I think first of all that you are correct about your data. You're wrong about your opinion. I started a movement painting crack houses in the community and trying to run drug dealers of my race out. That's one. Secondly, we had the use of Hawkins Drug Patrol that did the same thing. That's two. Thirdly, we're on tour now through housing developments. Congressman Ed Townsend and I spent last night in Tompkins Park having not only a voter registration, but anti-youth violence, because these random shootings and these drive-by shootings and this crime internally in the community must end. I just toured Rochester and Buffalo with the same thing. So you're absolutely incorrect that we don't address them, one. Secondly, we are activists. We're not messiahs. We cannot address everything in the community. We address the things that we can. You would not call B'nai B'rith and ask them why don't they build schools. They are there to protect civil rights of that community, and that's what we do. So don't ask me to be everything to everybody, but don't accuse me of not doing things in the community.
Why don't we see this in the news? Why don't we see this in the headlines in the newspaper?
Well, you have to call the news departments and ask them that. We were on one of the local stations this morning on live from.
I'm sure you have people that call the newspapers for you
and we
when
do.
You're going to march in Bensonhurst.
And we do. And we have them call when we're marching on the projects.
But it seems to make you have to be a publicity hound when the only thing that you do is sort of spread the racial tension.
Well, I think, first of all, Greg, if someone thinks that one responding to murder and one that themselves...
But
wait a minute.
Kill blacks, is that murder?
Greg, I hear you. You got to hear me, and we'll talk.
Okay.
One responding to murder, one that himself almost got murdered responding, and goes through all this harassments and scandals, is just doing it for publicity, then I think that is insane. I certainly get publicity without putting my life on the line and without dealing with the things that I'm dealing with. That's A. B, we are dealing with the crime in the black community. As I just said, we spent the night in Tompkins projects last night. I just finished a statewide sweep. I think it's a critical issue. The media does not like to deal with it. As you said, they won't even put the statistics in the paper. So don't think it is not a concern. It is a concern. And I think the media ought to play more on that, and also those that just deal with that. You have a lot of good programs out there that they ignore that are dealing with crime. Don't blame me for the media, but I thank you for calling, Greg. This is WABC Radio. This is Reverend Al Sharpton sitting in for Joy Behar. We're going to New Jersey to talk to Jim.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Jim.
I have a quick statement, if I may, and I really would like to hear your answer. I grew up in Brooklyn, a child of the 40s and 50s and 60s, and
you were a child a long time.
Yeah, I was. I guess so. Maybe still a child to some degree. Maybe we all are. But I listened to the groups, the Jive Five, the Five Satins. That was my music. I grew up. I ate that. I lived it. I slept it. I used to go to the Brooklyn Fox.
Murray Decay.
Great. What a day that was.
Right.
I mean, you look forward, like, I can't tell you how long. Friends I had were black. Friends I had were white. You never really thought much about the color. And as I got older, things in the city seemed to change. You know, Alan Freed used to say, we all go to different high schools together. And maybe not everybody felt that way. But I know I sure as heck did, and there probably were a lot of people like me that did. Born a Christian, learned that you invoke Jesus Christ many times, that each man is created equal and you treat him as an equal. If he's a bad guy, he's a bad guy. If he's white or he's black, he's a bad guy. If he's a bad guy, he's a good guy, he's a good guy. Then along came the Tawana Brawley situation. That's the first thing I can kind of remember. And you know, Reverend Al, things seem to change from one man's situation, meaning my own. The city, black people that you ran into seemed to be more angry. In other words, they were angry, I'm speaking again as a white man, They were angry at me before they knew me, before they knew what was in my mind, what was in my heart. You walk up to somebody in a hospital. Let's say you needed to talk to someone about a bill. The person they were talking to before you was black. They had a totally different demeanor than the person when you came up and talked to them. I'm not saying that Tawana Brawley started it. I'm not saying that you started it. But I have a feeling that the cauldron that got stirred up, and I'm sure you were working to do something positive. I'm going to give you that benefit of the doubt, okay? But I think what was created from it, Reverend Al, was not maybe what you wanted it to be. And I think there's a heck of a lot more hatred now than there was 15 years ago in New York.
Well, Jim, I think that there were many things, and I listened carefully, and I think you're sincere in what you're saying. I think there were many things that have caused a lot of hostility, not only to Tawana Brawley. I think Eleanor Bumpus, which happened before Brawley, Michael Stewart, and even Howard Beach happened before Brawley. And I think when people continually see incidents happen and the criminal justice system not respond and not do anything to penalize that, it causes hostility, it causes resentment, because people feel vulnerable. People feel that their children can be harmed and no one will do anything about it. People feel they themselves can be harmed and no one will do anything about it. And that's what the movement that I engaged in was all about. We're not trying to do anything but saying we are human beings equal and we must be treated and respected equally. If resulting hostilities and resulting tensions happen, you're right, that is not the goal of our movement. The goal of our movement was to establish equal protection under the law, and I think we need to understand that and try to get on track to deal with that.
Well, I think the only thing that's going to solve our problems, the only thing that's going to solve the problems of New York and any of the other cities and towns for that matter, is not what makes us different from one another, but what makes us alike. And those are the things I think that we have to keep in mind, and we have to play up.
I think you're right, but I think we've got to deal with, there's a difference between race relations and racial justice. Our problems are in terms of how the system responds to people of different communities and of different races. All the understanding in the world is good, but that will not solve the problem unless there is also institutional change to make those things cemented and protected by the system itself. But I thank you for calling. I've got to go to the next call. This is WABC. This is Reverend Al Sharpton sitting in for Joy Behar. We're going to take a break and get ready for the last lap of the historic morning.
Reverend Sharpton.
Good morning.
Good morning. My question is, what disturbs me most is, why do you defend the blacks that do wrong?
Well, name
Instead of correcting them and say, this is wrong, you shouldn't do this or that, and you defend them. You start marching for them. You do all these things.
Well, name them.
Well, I can't recall, but every time there's somebody that does wrong, it's you right away. It's because of the whites, this and this.
All right, well, I promise you, Louise, in front of thousands of listeners, that I will not fight for Roy Innes anymore. Thank you for calling. Richard, let's go to New York City.
Yes, I got to ask you a question. You always condemn white racism, okay? But you never condemned Sonny Carson, because when Mayor Dopey Dinkins was running for mayor, Carson got on TV and said he hated white people. We didn't hear a peep out of you. When the Jewish
I didn't hear Sonny Carson say he hated white people.
Yes, he did. And when the Jewish kid got stabbed in Crown Heights, we didn't hear a peep out of you. Where were you then? How come you didn't go yelling racism then?
Well, first of all, Richard, and your eloquence this morning, and we're so impressed with your eloquent use of the language. I don't think the mayor is dopey. I've never heard Sonny Carson say he hated anyone. And when the young man, Yankel Rosenberg, was stabbed in Crown Heights, it was the night that Gavin Cato was ran over by the car. I was not in Crown Heights. I got a call the next day from the Cato family. So unlike what you would think, I was not on the scene. So when you raise these questions, I don't know what you think I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be everywhere at the same time?
The scene in Bensonhurst, and yet you carried on something.
Oh, I came in after because there were no arrests made, and we marched and marched and marched until the arrests and the trials went. There was immediate arrest made in the Rosenboom case.
Forget it.
No, don't forget it. Just say that you tried it and it didn't work. Now let's go to Vanessa in Brooklyn. Good morning.
I'd like to talk about racial tensions in private schools.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Prep for Prep?
No, I haven't.
It's a program in which minority students can go to private schools for free without paying anything.
Mm-hmm.
if they're, a certain degree of intelligence. Now, I go to school with a lot of these people from prep, and a lot of them are in same or better financial situations than I am. They live in the same neighborhoods. Some of them have poorer grades than I do, and they go for free, and the only thing I can get is financial aid.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's fair?
Well, first of all, you're asking about a specific program. I'm trusting your description of it. I do not know the program, so it would be very presumptuous of me to go on your description and then make a value judgment on the program. But I'll let you say what you said, and the way you outlined it is your opinion. Thank you for calling. Let's go to David in Brooklyn.
Yes, hi. You was talking before about the Crown Heights with that gentleman who was berating you. And I understand there's a rally coming up. I believe it's next week in Crown Heights?
Yeah, Tuesday night.
Right. I was wondering, after what had happened, the craziness that happened there, over 1,000 people hurt, including many of them police officers, wondering what the point is of a rally where a child was killed accidentally. I mean, whether or not the guy was wrong, the guy didn't do it on purpose.
Well, first of all, many of us do not believe it was an accident, but that is not the point of the rally. The point of the rally is to memorialize the loss of the life and the fact that there has been no kind of compensation to the family. If you and I were in a pure accident this morning, we would go to civil court. This driver has been allowed to not even be served civil court papers, and that is horrendous. And I think any family has a right to have a memorial. Any community has a right to mourn its dead, and that's what we will do on Tuesday night. And I don't understand, what do you mean you don't understand the point? The point of any memorial is remember someone that has lost life, and I don't think we have to make a point beyond that.
Well, I agree that everybody has their right to memorialize their dead, and it's a shame that it happened. But wouldn't it be of less decisiveness to take it into a church or into a community hall? And
the rally is in a church, St. Anthony's Baptist Church, where the funeral was.
Okay, that's good. Okay, I didn't know. That's why I'm asking.
Uh-huh.
And because of what happened there, it was crazy. I mean, I understand you feel that, or some people feel that it might have been accidental. I mean, that might not have been accidental. I mean, I personally don't think I know a little bit history of the case. I know some of the attorneys involved in the case. I know that the gentleman himself, who was the driver of the car, had been given a citation by the New York City Fire Department for saving a black child from a fire.
Yeah, but then if all of that is true, then he should have said that he would be served civil papers and go into court and regard the civil laws of this country.
Well,
he did not do that. He walked out of the grand jury, went to the airport, and left the country.
You're right.
Wrong.
But you're right. But you must admit that after what had happened prior to that, it was a little wild. The guy was probably very nervous. Like you said, his name's Yankel Rosenbaum, by the way, not Bloom, was killed, and you said that action was taken by that. One person was arrested of at least five people who had killed him. So that also wasn't correct of what happened, and I think what the guy was saying beforehand, he wasn't doing it in the right way, but he was saying that if you're going to take action, you want people to go deeper into the case of Calvin Gato, you should also want them to go deeper into Yanko Rosenbaum, which also
There'll be a trial. They'll go very deep into that case.
There's only one arrest of the five guys.
And he will go on trial.
But what about the other guys who killed him? They're just as guilty as the guy
If there were other guys that killed him, they are just as guilty. But there will be a trial, and they will go very deep in that. There will not even be a civil trial in the Cato case. If I went to Bensonhurst today and had a legitimate accident, the fact that I was stabbed there is no reason for me to leave the country and not answer my obligation of operating a vehicle, David.
I'm not saying that he's right. I'm saying that...
I agree. Now we agree, David.
No, I'm not saying he's right. I'm just saying that I'm sure he was nervous or whatever he did.
Well, it's a year later. He should come back and face the music.
He could, but I'm not going to defend him.
Right,
I'm just saying, first of all, what you're saying about the guy, they're going to go very deeply into the trial. Even Charles Hines has said that they don't have enough cooperation to go deep in the trial. The 911 tapes have been mysteriously lost. And, there are at least four guys out there running around with blood on their hands.
Well, I don't know of that evidence, but I know there will be a trial. But I thank you for calling, David, and we've got to move on. This is Joy Behar's show. I am Reverend Al Sharpton, sitting in for her, WABC 77 Radio this morning. You can call me and let us talk at 212-563-WABC. If you're in New Jersey, 201 489 WABC right after this break. We're so hot we got to keep breaking to cool off this morning. It's to Betty.
Good morning, Reverend Sharpton.
Good morning.
Hi, I'm a fourth generation born in Brooklyn
person whose grandmother was born at 731 Gates Avenue and grew up at 205 Troy. That's about 2 blocks from the Wheatville community.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering, over a 100-year period, what has happened to once that was a beautiful area?
What has happened?
But beautiful.
Well, I've only lived 38 of those 100 years, but I think that many things have happened. Drugs has happened. The unequal distribution of wealth has happened. I think many things has happened that causes the deterioration of any area. I think in many other areas, there has been areas that were open landfills and open dumps that have been built up and developed where money has been pouring in. So you've seen some areas rise and other areas go through a demise. That's based on the institutional investment or lack of investment in areas.
This is true. This is very true. I'd like to ask you one other question, because I'm kind of like a little history buff, and I'm very interested in the history of New York and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
During World War I, I also researched because my uncle's name is on a monument that's in Prospect Park that I'm trying to have restored because it's been deteriorating for over the years. Why there is no mention or monument to the black soldiers who died in World War I?
I think that you raise an excellent point, because I think that it would raise a tremendous amount of pride in the young people in that area. And I think it would lead toward people understanding the input from all communities in trying to restore this country, so that when people ask things of the country, they are asking based on the historic investment from all communities. I think you have an excellent idea.
I'd like to know if I could possibly get in contact with you some way.
Absolutely. 718-398-1669.
Excuse me, wait, 718
398
398
1669.
1669. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Betty. And this is Reverend Al Sharpton sitting in for Joy Behart. This is WABC Radio. Let's go to Brooklyn to Steve.
Hey, good morning, Reverend.
Good morning.
I was going to talk about Gavin Cato, but you pretty much covered it already.
Okay.
I want to ask you if you're familiar with the case of the teacher David Clark in New Jersey.
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, let me tell you what happened. Dave Clark called anonymously, just as a man called Dave from New Jersey, as a school teacher to the Bob Grant program, and he was talking about last year during Black History Month that his supervisor asked him what was he preparing. He has a English course. What was he preparing for to teach his students? And he said that he had some works from George Washington Carver and from Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, and he said that wasn't sufficient. That his supervisor asked him to teach works that were translated from Swahili from Africa. So he said, I'm not going to do it. This is what I think is good for American history, for Black History Month. And so he came on the Bob Grant show, and he was expressing his that he was disappointed and that his supervisor wasn't satisfied with that, and he wasn't going to teach it till it became officially part of the curriculum. And later on, someone had heard him calling in, and also he said that there's a sign on the school that says 2,000 years of African history, 200 years of American history. And he commented that in 2,000 years the Africans were still bathing in their drinking water, and in 200 years we sent the man to the moon. Someone heard him making that call, and
which is also, incorrect, but go ahead.
Okay, well, someone heard him making the call and reported him to the supervisor, and he's so far been suspended without pay since that time. Now, what do you think about that? Don't you think that this man has the right to make an anonymous statement, not teaching that to his students, mind you?
Well, I think he has the right. I think he has the right to make an anonymous statement, as untrue as it is and as bigoted as it is. But, it reminds me of a case where there's a lawyer named Alton Maddox who made statements outside of a courtroom that Attorney General Robert Abrams used to suspend his license. Would you agree that that is wrong?
Yeah.
Well, then maybe Mr. Clark is the white Alton Maddox, and we need to deal with that case. Thank you for calling, Steve. We're going to Wayne and talk to Bob. Bob has an earth-shattering issue he wants to talk about.
Oh, you got it. Yeah, Reverend Al, what's happening?
All right.
I wanted to know where you got your hair done, and also was there any inspiration or anything that happened or, any one thing that inspired you to wear your hair that way?
Yes, I was raised by James Brown. James Brown took me and styled my hair this way the first time, and now, besides my wife, there's a beautiful black-owned shop in Teaneck, New Jersey, that is owned by Gina Beatty. You can go and try to get your hair done this way if you're lucky. Thank you for letting me give Gina a commercial.
All right.
All right. Now let us go to Nassau County to Terry.
Hi, Al?
Yes.
Hi, this is Terry, and the reason I'm calling is you're running for the Senate, right?
Correct.
Now, as a senator, if you make it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we know about all the march. What would you think if there was a march for every white woman who got raped by a black man, for every white man who's been mugged by a black man, for every black officer, a white officer who's been killed by a black man?
I mean,
we'd have marches constantly.
And we do. And I think that if I was senator,
we don't.
I think if I was senator and those marches occurred, I would say we need to strengthen the laws so people will not feel that they have to march because they're not protected by the law. It would not bother me at all that they're marching. It would bother me that there's the need for them to march and that they have lost confidence in the system.
But there is a need for them to march, and they don't.
Well, I don't see, then I think that you need to challenge the leadership in those areas and in those communities rather than complain about me doing my job. You need to get them on their job.
Yeah, but it's Dinkins who runs the city, and that's where most of it happens.
Where most of what happens?
Where the black against white crimes happen.
What black against white crimes happen in the city?
The rapes.
What rapes are you talking about?
Oh, God, there's so many of them. I don't even, it's not even headlines anymore.
Well, I'm certainly not aware of it, and if you would let me know, I would definitely call the mayor and tell him, because I definitely think that the mayor is not condoning rapes of anybody.
Well, how about the white policeman killed by blacks? That's in the papers.
What white policeman that was killed by blacks are you referring to?
All of them.
I think that the ones that have been killed, I have not heard the mayor condone it. I've seen him go to the funeral.
Burns? What about Burns?
What about Burns? People went to jail. People were prosecuted for Burns.
There were no marches before it happened.
What were you going to march for? They were arrests made. People marched.
Not immediately they
Well,
weren't
I think
arrested.
until there were arrests made, Phil Caruso and PBA and others raised all kinds of
There weren't marches, though. The whole neighborhood wasn't disturbed. And what about...
No, the whole neighborhood was closed down until they made arrests.
And what about...
You couldn't even move in Jamaica.
And
what do you mean disturbed?
And what about that young policeman who was permanently crippled by a black teenager shooting him?
Well, I don't... Again, which one are you referring to?
Oh, you know the one who's always... He's in a wheelchair now.
Oh, Stephen McDonald.
Right, McDonald.
Was not that young man prosecuted?
Yeah, but not immediately.
But I think you have to realize we're talking about cases where people are not prosecuted.
As soon as something happens in even an accident in a black community happens, and it happens to be a white person involved in it, even if it's an accident, the white person has to run for their lives.
Run for what life? Name me one case that a white was accused of a crime that he was hurt, that he had to run for his life. Name one. I didn't think
They're in the papers
Terry.
all the time, and you know them.
I didn't think you could, Terry.
I don't keep a manuscript. I just read the papers every day.
Well, Terry, I don't agree with you, and I hear the dog barking in protest with me. But thank you for calling.
Okay.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton sitting in for Joy Behar, WABC Radio. Let's go to Norma in Scarsdale.
Hello, I'm gonna call you Alfred, and I'll tell you why, Reverend Al, because I was your homeroom teacher at Tilden High School in Brooklyn.
Oh my God!
And now,
and you're running against me for the Senate now.
That's right. I'm the Libertarian candidate for the United States Senate.
Well, welcome to the race.
Thank you very much.
I hope they don't have any tapes of you and me 20 years ago sitting in homeroom talking about a boxing match.
Well, I admired you really back then, and you were a very historical figure then, because at that time you were protesting the sending of black troops to Vietnam when they didn't have rights back home.
And that was before I was ever on TV, right?
That's right.
So you can attest that I've been doing this all my life, even when I was not getting publicity.
Right, that's
We can agree on that.
And you had, and I agree with you on I would think a few issues, at least on personal liberties. Libertarians are very liberal when it comes to personal liberties.
Okay, no.
But we have, Tom Sowell, who writes for the New York Post, and Walter Williams, both black syndicated columnists who are libertarians. Where we differ with you probably most is on the idea of welfare. We believe welfare is done more to keep the poor than any other single source.
Well, I think more welfare is given to the rich than given to the poor.
I agree with you. I think Chapter 12 and bailing out Chrysler is also welfare to the rich, and we're against that, of course. The libertarians are. But Malcolm X called welfare the welfare plantation, and the reason he called it that is that it pays people to break up their families. It pays the father to leave the home. It pays people to act responsibly and to act irresponsibly, rather, and to sort of stay the way they are. And we're against that. We think that if welfare was turned over to private charities and people were sort of more forced to act responsibly, then people would do better.
Well, I thank you for calling, Norma. I believe in equal time to my opponents. This is one of the 3 female candidates I'm running against. She's on the Libertarian line. She was my former homeroom teacher in Tilden High School, Norma Siegel. Thank you for calling. This is Reverend Al Sharpton sitting in for Joy Behar, WABC Radio. Let's go back to New Jersey to Gary.
Hi, Reverend Al?
Yeah.
I'd like to know, if this country is such a racist country, why do so many Africans come in from Kenya, Nigeria, and all these African countries? Why are they coming in here in such large numbers? Jamaica also.
Why should they not come? Do you mean now because people travel, that makes something more or less racist?
No, I mean emigrate. Come here to live. If this country
they
is
come
so
here
mean
to
and
live because they try to break through and try to exist and make it like any other person that comes here. That does not make this place less racist. It means that people try to come here and living in their own homes. Many of them are controlled anyway by the United States or European countries, so there is no real difference in living in a colony or living directly in the home base of an empire.
And all right, another question I have is like...
I thought you would.
Okay, why the Haitians? Why they don't go to Jamaica or the Bahamas? Why they wish to come here?
Well, why not come here? Everybody else comes here. You just said that. So, I mean, now you want to be the travel agent for the people in Haiti. Why shouldn't they have the right to come here? Everybody, you go out to the island today, to Ellis Island. Everybody else is welcome here. The Statue of Liberty standing there. Why does they turn the Statue of Liberty's back on the Haitians? I think that it is terrible that people are selective in their compassion. There is compassion for people in Bosnia, and rightfully so, but what about the compassion for people in Somalia and Haiti? And not only are we not showing that compassion, we're in court making sure that Haitians can't come here, and some of them are dying at sea because of American policy. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. Either you're for helping people or you're not for helping people. Thank you for Gary. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Al Sharpton sitting for Joy Behar for last home stretch. Last 2 minutes, let us talk to James in Manhattan.
Yes, hello? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure to talk to you, Al.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to make several points. It seems like Europeans who have been the perpetrators of great crimes and atrocities against the dark nations of the earth. It's a known fact that the United States was founded upon stolen land. They stole this country from the Indians by rape, robbery, murder, and butchery. Okay, maybe with your vast wisdom and understanding, you can explain the psychology of white people and why they feel that they can commit crimes with impunity, and no one is supposed to give them any resistance. They oppress people, inflict pain on people, enslave people, and then complain. They complain about the way these people respond to the oppression and the pain. Is there
I can't explain it. I agree with you that people are acting as if they have impunity. I agree with you that people are acting like their crimes were not committed. I cannot explain it. I think that it is absolutely ridiculous, and I think that we must resist it at every level that we can.
But very quickly.
Quickly, I only got a minute left.
How is it? I mean, where are the we should be asking white people, where are their green cards? They can extradite people. This country is stolen property. I don't feel that they have a position to go anywhere in the world and tell people like Hussein to get out of Kuwait when the Indians should be telling them to get out of this country. And if you raise that issue with them, they'll say, well, that's ridiculous. We stole this country as ours.
Again, brother, I'm running down to 1 minute, but I think the gist of your call is absolutely on target. I've done my best. I've got to rest. This has been Reverend Al Sharpton for Joy Behar. Stay tuned. Ed Koch is coming up, the voice of reason for this season.
From ABC News, I'm Gary Nahn. A slight rev up at the nation's factories, mines, and utilities. Industrial production jumped 0.4% last month, reversing a similar decline the month before. ABC's Tony Sargent with more from Washington.
Total output by factories, mines, and utilities rose pretty steadily early this year, but slumped in June. July's increase just about regains that lost ground. It was a better month for coal mines and electric utilities as power use climbed, but output at the nation's factories stayed about flat in July, another sign the economy was running in low gear. Factory use was still below the level where production bottlenecks often appear and push prices up. Tony Sargent, ABC News, Washington.
Several small banks that lend to Chrysler Corporation reportedly are refusing to renew their loans. The New York Times reports a $6.8 billion loan package is on the line, a deal vital to the revitalization of Chrysler. The company is said to consider the loan so important it's asking Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan to step in. More news after this.
A warm welcome to all our new employees. Now, as we begin orientation, please remember our company maintains a no smoking policy.
I'm a smoker. But where I'll be working, smoking just doesn't fit the agenda. And with the amount of time I'll spend on the job, well, it's a good thing I've got Wrigley Spearmint Gum. That cool, clean taste works every time.
Here, let me show you to your office.
When I can't smoke, I enjoy pure chewing satisfaction. Now that's what Wrigley Spearmint is all about.
In these tough times, chances are you aren't seeing too many bonuses. We at International Trucks think that's a shame. So we're offering you a great bonus on a great truck. Make your best deal on any International medium truck during our big bonus days and get a credit of $1,000 good for free parts and service on any truck you own. Or get $2,000 in credit on an International heavy truck. Just buy and take delivery from dealers stocked between July 1st and September 30th. Call 1-800-44-TRUCK or see your International dealer for details.
NATO allies are conferring in Brussels, taking a fresh look at contingency plans to use thousands of troops to escort shipments of food and medical supplies into Bosnia. Bosnia's ambassador to the UN, Mohammed Shakari, says his country welcomes international relief.